Macs, and those everybody agrees are superior machines.
Yeah.
Yeah, but apparently you don't because your video looks like my phone recorded it.
Listen, this is a Dell PC that I only have for this particular podcast. I only use it to do this Zoom show.
Yeah. Geez. So Evan, this in Washington State, you are required to give all parties explicit consent when you start recording something, and you did not do that.
Well, I wasn't necessarily recording the show. I just wanted to have it. We can always trim it because you never know. Sometimes it's the trimming that has the best content. Something I learned in
Like
show
circumcision.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the 5 minutes before you turn on the recorder are the best. You turn it off, and then some funny stuff happens at the end. So we don't want to miss anything.
Everything should be recorded all the time and kept forever.
I know you really think that.
Yeah.
That's why Twitter is archived at the Library of Congress.
Where I am right now, as you can see.
The internet is so bad.
Yeah. Speaking of surveillance, I never expected 1984 to be a documentary.
Is this going in? Are we live? I hope that makes it.
I definitely made the cut.
What we're going to have to do, though, is one of us is going to have to, after this is all wrapped up, do an introduction of on today's podcast.
You know what? Who doesn't know what they're listening to when they started? This isn't the radio. You've already chosen what you're watching or listening. The idea that it needs an introduction assumes that someone is randomly watching it on broadcast television or something.
But that does happen, right? We have a
How?
So here's the thing, though. Here's the thing, Adam, is that so people do, as we found out, people do stumble across these podcasts. So if you are wandering through the desert of the internet and you come across this oasis of content, Adam, for that listener, can you explain what they are listening to today?
No.
Why not?
Well,
it's self-evident. Some guys talking. That's all. That's what most of it is.
No, it's not just some guys talking. It's Mike's Movie Podcast featuring Evan, with special guest Adam, where today we are discussing a film that's directed by Joel Schumacher, which similar to number 23 has a number in the title, but this one is 8mm.
Did you already own number 23, or did you get that related to this show?
No, I already owned it. I have it on my shelf of media.
I was really hoping you bought it.
Did you already own 8mm?
No, I did not. I did not own.
So do you think number 23 is a better movie than 8mm?
No, I
because I don't.
Well, here's the thing.
I like them both.
This is the first time I've seen 8mm.
But you own the number 23.
Well, let me give you a quick overview of the custody of the number 23. Is that this is not
divorce related?
What do you think?
Custody, like it's divorce.
Yeah, well, I mean, to an extent, is that back in August I moved into a new apartment, and the previous apartment I moved into in August of 2017, and the previous people who I took over for on their lease, they were the original owners of the number 23. But then when time came for me to move, I'm like, yes, I'm going to keep this. So that's what I did. So that's why I have it. I did not actively purchase it, but when the opportunity came for me to obtain full custody of it, I enthusiastically agreed to it.
Right.
I enjoy all movies by Joel Schumacher.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's something that we can definitely chew on throughout this podcast, because he's got quite
I would say I enjoy most of them. Probably the only one when he died, Shane and I watched Blood Creek, which is like a way late Michael Fassbender.
I was going to ask you about Blood Creek.
It's it's not good, but we still had a good time. I don't know. I'm trying to think of my least. I haven't seen them all. I haven't seen Tigerland, which I know people like. I even have a soft spot for the boring John Grisham ones, I don't know what my least favorite Joel Schumacher is.
So this, I don't really put directors and writers' names to movies that I like. This was
Which is
fortunate.
perfect for having a movie podcast.
Yeah, exactly. I don't, well, we all know what my job is here. And 8 millimeter, it was a movie I wanted to see when it first came out. So I've been thinking about it and wanting to watch it for over 20 years now. And
But this
finally,
is your first time too.
a couple weeks ago, finally got around to watching it, and it was incredibly enjoyable. I only had the few other Joel Schumacher movies that I've seen to compare it to. And I don't know that there's a distinct pattern. I mean, I really liked Lost Boys when it came out for reasons different from the ones that I liked 8 millimeter. But I also didn't realize this was the guy who picked up the Batman baton after Tim Burton. So that's something. And I thought 8 millimeter,
This is the first one after Batman and Robin. This is fresh off Batman.
which is kind of obvious to me. It's sort of, they have a very similar tone, and when I was a kid and when I saw the trailer for this movie, I thought this is going to be some dark shit. This is going to be really heavy. I don't even know if I can handle this, because I knew what the subject matter was. And then I watched it, and it's pretty much like watching Batman and Robin, in that it's like, it's enjoyable, but it's just bad throughout.
I mean, the thing about Joel Schumacher is like, he's a stylist guy, but he also he knows he's in business. He's in the business of movie making.
See, this is inside baseball. I like this.
I just mean because he has a very varied career, but when you see what I was thinking about a lot is obviously 8 millimeter comes across to me as the movie, in the text of the movie, is kind of like, woo, gross. What's up with this pervert stuff? But if you read enough interviews with Joel Schumacher, he doesn't think that. It's not like it's a representation of his own ideology. He's just like, okay, well, this is what we're doing. Okay, we'll do this.
Exactly. That's exactly how it's like. Okay, well, my job in 1998 was to do Batman and Robin, and now that's done. So my new job is to make this movie where the plot happens to be this, but here's how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And
I've never tracked it down again, but I remember at the time in 1999 when I had a subscription to Spin magazine, it wasn't a full interview, but there was a quote from Joel Schumacher about Batman and Robin, because at the time people hated it, and a lot of people still hate it. I've only casually tried to find it, but I do someday want to find it. So the gist of it was, the question was posed to him, how do you feel about how much people fucking hate this movie and say that it sucks and you suck? And he said, yeah, when we were making it, I was really passionate about it and thought it was going to be great. And then I sat at the premiere, and after the premiere, I took all my drugs and drug paraphernalia, buried them in the snow, and quit drugs cold turkey. Which is another, maybe that's why he has such a, where he's playing to such a puritanical outlook at 8 millimeter, because he's like, you know what? All that dirty stuff is bad. We're done with that.
Yeah, not a whiff of drug influence at 8 millimeter. It's good, clean fun.
I wasn't going to say with that, when watching the movie, it did harken me back a bit to mid to late 90s local news 60 minutes type stuff of this moral panic type stuff of where 60 minutes takes you to the underbelly of American society. So there kind of was some of that late 90s, late Clinton, early George Bush era vibes to the overall message of the movie.
This is a Clinton era movie if I've ever seen one.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Speaking of which, are we going to talk about the election, guys? Aren't we all relieved?
Well, let's wait till it's over.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're talking about the re-election of Phil Scott in Vermont. Is that right?
Fuck Phil.
Yeah.
Hey, It's anybody's race at this point.
Since I already broke kayfabe to talk about current affairs, I'm very curious, since it's a hot topic and most people know, what are you guys doing for Thanksgiving
Nothing.
/ Christmas? You're just going to be in Durham by yourself?
I'm in Chapel Hill now.
Well, whatever. No one can tell them apart.
Oh, they're quite different. Definitely not doing anything for Thanksgiving. I might make a special quarantine COVID trek up to Wisconsin, which is currently teeming with infection.
Belly of the beast.
Belly of the
This is
beast.
why I was curious.
But hopefully by December, mid-December, it'll be a little bit more manageable. But I plan to go up there and get a
You
test.
want to bet on it?
And go up there and get a nose test so I can kiss my dad and say Merry Christmas and maybe go to Madison after that. What about you guys?
I will be in the same building I've been in, eating a turkey that we raised in our backyard.
Oh, really?
Yes, sir. If you come up here, I'll give you a turkey. We got 10 of them.
Well, I want to actually kill the turkey.
Well, you have to be certified.
Is that true?
No, of course not.
I don't know.
What is? Can you, Adam? Like, do you live in a house or an apartment building?
I live in a house. Do you not know that I'm in Vermont now? Have we
I
not
do
talked
know
about this?
Well, I do know that you're in Vermont, but you just in describing your place of residence, you said building. So I didn't know if that was a
It's a structure.
Yeah. So wait. So whereabouts in Vermont are you here? Well, I guess we don't want to say that. We want to keep some anonymity.
You ain't gonna find me in between Bristol and Starksboro.
Yeah.
Oh, that could be any number of places. That's
Bring it on.
And listen,
Come get me. Come get me, haters.
listen. This is a joke that I know that I've made many times before, and I'm going to make it again, even though it's stale. I know where Adam lives because he's right underneath the biggest billboard in Vermont. So,
Yeah, it's a billboard for Mike's Movie Podcast. It's the only one. It's illegal, and they've been trying to stop me, but I'm sticking to my libertarian ideals and not letting the government restrain me from having my Mike's Movie Podcast billboard.
Oh, that would be.
Have you ever seen Primus play a live performance in Vermont?
Oh God, yes, several times.
It's the only place they play.
Yeah.
Patently false, but it is definitely a place they make sure to hit on tour. Many bands will gloss right over, go from Montreal straight to Boston or New York, but Primus knows where their bread's buttered. Primus is Les buddies with Trey. Every time they play here, Trey does some Oysterhead songs with them.
I mean, those guys.
Yeah. I'd like to see, especially if you get the original lineup together. I'd like to see some live Oysterhead songs.
You never saw him back in the day?
I did not. No, I did not. I did not get into.
It's no Primus.
Was that?
It's no Primus.
No, it's not. It's not. But I mean, for what it is, it's it's still.
I also, in recent years, found a bootleg CD of one of the Primus shows in Burlington that I was at.
Mhm.
Like a soundboard bootleg with someone made their own artwork and track listing for.
What is the the music venue scene like in Burlington, Vermont? So, like, if you want to see a show, is there like the Majestic or the Orpheum or a place that you go? Or
it's different now than when I was a young man, but there's a couple spots. If you're trying to play more than to 1,000 people, you got like nothing. You're gonna play like the fairgrounds. There's nothing big, but that makes sense because there's not that many people go to anything. So. The Patrick Gymnasium was the show I saw Primus at that there's a bootleg CD of, so you can imagine what that is like. Yeah. I believe POD opened that show.
Oh man, yeah, that's.
But I want to go back to what are you doing for Thanksgiving, Christmas?
Oh, I'll be totally hunkered down here up in the Pacific Northwest. I did have some family that was going to visit me, but then cases have they are what they are. So I will not be doing much for Thanksgiving. Now, I'm really not much of a Thanksgiving enthusiast myself. So just like me hanging out alone by myself is just A-okay with me.
I guess this is also inside baseball, but the big question is, what's Mike doing for New Year's?
You know damn well what he's doing for New Year's. It involves a TV remote Conan O'Brien and Def Leppard played at full volume.
I the reason Mike and New Year's is on my mind is I fell asleep watching a movie called Death in Small Doses, which is kind of a famous in a cult way, like 40s, 50s noir movie about like, it's like a PSA scare film noir movie about truckers doing speed. But Chuck Connors plays one of the truckers real jacked up on speed. And Chuck Connors is already kind of a Mike kind of guy because he's really tall. And before he was an actor, he was like in Major League Baseball and in the NBA. So he's a real sports guy, all-American kind of guy. He always just kind of he doesn't look like Mike, but just the tallness and the upstanding pureness of him is kind of Mike. And in this movie, when he's supposed to be super jacked up on amphetamines the whole movie, it was a real Mike at New Year's kind of vibe. Did you ever want to just watch Death in Small Doses and Chuck Connors is Mike at New Year's?
We can't properly convey to the listeners who haven't seen it.
Well,
Mike does a unique brand of performance art on New Year's Eve, and I won't go into detail because that's his work.
Well, that's true. I want to say, just to go through this, because my memory is atrophying as the sand through the hourglass passes by.
Indeed.
Because if I recall, we have exclusive footage of me being enthusiastic about the New Year being rung in two separate locations. Because if I remember correctly, there's one at your mom's place and one on Water's Edge. And I feel like one of them would have been a high school, and then
If memory serves, one is Y2K, the daddy of all.
The big one.
No, so that I know that Y2K was not one of them.
Okay, then it was 2001.
Which is the real millennium anyway, because 0 isn't a year.
Right.
I know that. I think it would have had to have been 2001 to 2002.
Well, we'll go back to the.
Well, right here is where we'll edit in that footage.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the thing is, it's exciting stuff. In Seattle, they historically will shoot off some fireworks off the Space Needle. We'll see if that happens this year.
Wow.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But I want to talk a bit about. I want to make. Go ahead.
I hope they do shoot off those fireworks. That would be great.
That's going to scare the virus, or maybe it'll piss it off.
Yeah, make it angry.
I wish you guys would have had that whole Primus tangent about 45 minutes later, because I'm going to need to go down and check on the roast, and that would have been a good segment for me to just kind of tiptoe out.
Let's see that roast. Bring the computer. I want to see that roast.
Not a roast. It's stir fry shit. You don't even want to know. Yeah. I can't cook. But I'm trying, and I'm doing meal prep
God
Sundays.
bless you.
Meal prep Sundays. You take a nice long walk. You do your meal prep, clean up, maybe do a little laundry. Anything you need to do. That's bachelor living.
I didn't do shit. I watched 3 movies, fed the birds. Now I'm doing this.
Movies are for late nights when you have a date. Definitely not.
I got a date with myself every day.
And they should be limited to one a week. One movie a week. Okay, sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
Well, I have a couple movie things to say. So I want to start. I actually want to let everybody know that I watched 2 movies this weekend. I watched one last night. Last night is when I watched 8mm. On Friday night, I watched another movie that I had seen. This is actually the first time I watched it from start to finish. Now, this actually closes, for me, it closes a pretty important Naked Gun loop, or as Adam likes to say, clothes knife.
We'll get to that.
It closes a pretty big loop, because something that from the early days when I was watching Naked Gun, what I always remembered, a joke that I did not understand the first several times I saw the movie, because I was 8, 9, 10 years old, was when they are walking out of the movie theater and they are laughing hysterically, and the movie that is showing is Platoon. And so the movie that I watched for the first time on Friday night was Platoon, and I have a much deeper appreciation for that joke after having seen that movie.
You should have told me. I've never seen it either. That would have been a funny one to do. That would have been in your and Evan's private tradition of like watching the classics.
Yeah, it did make me think a little bit about Bridgie K. No doubt.
Bridge K, of course.
Yeah,
The classics that Mike and I, took on together as a duo early in the pandemic.
The fans have those episodes memorized. We don't need to rehash.
There was Larry, Benny, Doc.
yeah.
So what's your review? What's your condensed, because it's not the topic. What's your review of Platoon? I'm very curious as someone who's never seen it.
Oh no, I think it's a good movie. It's a highly regarded film, and I think it is worthy of those high regards, I would say. So
because one of the reasons I've never seen it is I'm not a big war movie guy. I don't know how you are on war movies or how you rank it compared to other war movies.
Love.
Well, there's yeah. I mean, I guess I wouldn't say that I'm a big war movie guy either. But I mean, yeah. Again, I will say with that particular motion picture, I'm a big fan of Willem Dafoe, who of course has an iconic role in that movie. And I think Charlie Sheen brings a very good maniac energy to the to the story, which is good. And there is no comparison between Platoon really and The Thin Red Line, but I still can't think of any like war movie without thinking of like those Terrence Malick kind of whispery meditations.
Did you see Thin Red Line when it came out?
I did. And
I went with my dad. Did you go with your dad?
No, actually, I saw it.
It's a good father-son movie.
No, I saw it on home video, and of course, when I saw it, I was being like, what I think it was like 13, 14 when it came out, and I'm like, okay, I want to see some explosions and whatnot. And I remember the first 45 minutes of it was like Jim Caviezel, doing the typical Terrence Malick narration.
I have not seen the movie. I don't know anything about Terrence Malick.
Cool. Thanks for the contribution.
I have, it's a preface to a question, asshole. Slow it down.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
I think I was like 4 minutes late to send the link to record this session, and like there were already like 12 texts on my phone from Adam.
I'm peeking. I can't. You gotta get right in on the wave and just ride it.
Like several ellipses. Like, where the fuck is he? No,
I'm Chuck Connors at death in small doses.
I wanted to ask why Thin Red Line is a good movie to see with your dad.
It's for a number of reasons. Before you've seen the movie, you're like, war epic, about World War II. That's the one Grandpa was in. Oh, the Pacific Theater.
Oh, that old one.
But then you go see it, and as Mike has alluded to, it is a very non-traditional war movie in that it is, primarily beautiful jungle footage with like sweating men with whispered existential narration, and it's like 3 hours long.
That does sound pretty good.
Then you and your dad can be like, well, wow.
Want to go to the sauna?
And then it's very funny, saw that was the first Terrence Malick movie I saw in theaters because there's the first movie he made in our lifetimes that came out when we weren't. Yes, I think that's true. And then his most recent movie, A Hidden Life, I also saw with my dad, which is about a guy who refuses to join the Nazi army and is put to death, and is also 3 hours of existential dread.
What was the name of the Terrence Malick movie that we
Night
saw?
of Cups.
What's that?
Night of Cups.
Night of Cups.
And honestly, I got to tell you, I have a soft spot for that kind of stuff. That I still like that one, but that might be my least favorite of all of his movies that I've seen.
Yeah, I was saying the only thing that I remember about Night of Cups is that like I was in the theater and I had my crumply bag of candy in my
Legendary.
popcorn, and I was waiting for there to be like noise in the movie so I could reach in and grab my candy, but it was just so quiet.
Yep. That's, at least Thin Red Line, there are a couple of gunshots or explosions. So you could have quickly eaten a popcorn abruptly after like an hour in Thin Red Line.
Yeah. You're doing all right there.
I don't know anything. I'm just imagining like you guys walking into an art theater, like an art house theater in LA together.
Nope.
And like it's a
Mike, do you remember?
And
It was the only time I ever went to that theater. What was that theater called, Mike? Do you remember? It's over in like U district, right?
I want to say it was like the Seven Gables.
Yes, I think you're right. This is the only time I ever went there. This is a fine establishment. I doubt it's operating anymore.
There's like 12 seats.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's the Seven Gables Theater, which is unfortunately permanently closed. We
And I
actually,
think that was pre-pandemic, right? I think I remember hearing about it closing a while ago.
oh yeah, for sure. It certainly was. And I know that the Guild 45th is where we saw Anomalisa. That one's also permanently closed. So I mean, Seattle has some pretty good theaters that pre-pandemic which are no longer open.
And I know it's a whole thing, but Cinerama's getting all fucked around, changed owners, people got fired, confusing stuff happening.
Yes, exactly. It's confusing. I'm not entirely sure what's going on there, but it seems like the future of Cinerama is a little bit in flux. And I haven't really read too much about it. I don't know how much of that may or may not actually be related to the death of Paul Allen, because I feel like if Paul
was killed as part of a larger conspiracy to take over Cinerama.
Yeah.
Which is
You heard it here first, folks.
it's also linked to the untimely death of Joel Schumacher.
Yep.
And it was
That was Paul Allen. Joel Schumacher killed Paul Allen for the Illuminati, and then they had to kill Joel to cover it up.
Yeah, and 8mm was a concession to the Illuminati. So
Yeah, 8mm is to Joel Schumacher killing Paul Allen as The Shining is to Stanley Kubrick faking the moon landing.
Yeah. You know, quick pause to shout out to Papa Wheelie, who left a comment. That's Papa Wheelie, P-A-P-P-A-W-H-E-E-L-I-E. Papa Wheelie said 3 weeks ago, could you please put in the description a timestamp when we actually start talking about the movie in the title of the video? That's why we're here. And bless his heart was listening to what appears to be a good chunk of our 2-hour podcast. And I'm thinking of ending things. I want to say we appreciate your business. Keep coming back.
Yeah.
I don't know when
we want to take bets whether he listens to this one.
I really hope so.
Really comment.
I'm tempted to put.
How are we going to celebrate? If he leaves a second comment, he can pick what movie we watch next time. Papa Wheelie, if you're listening to this, comment what you want us to watch. We'll do it. I'm not even the host or the featured, but I'm the guest, and I'll declare it.
And we'll even timestamp it for you.
It'll be a full episode. We'll immediately start talking about it just for you.
Well,
That's the kind of personalized customer service we strive for here at Mike's Podcast Network.
I do have on the subject of 8mm. I have a cinematic comparison that I want to make between 8mm and another film, and that comparison, what it made me think of in a very loosely related way, made me think of another Nicolas Cage film by the name of Mandy.
Which I
Interesting.
So and the comparison between Mandy and 8mm is that one, both of them had some pretty pronounced BDSM imagery.
Okay.
But more, so that was part of it. But the other part of it was there was both of those movies have a Nicolas Cage revenge plot to them, where a central character gets killed, and then Nicolas Cage avenges their death in a very violent, brutal way.
He has a lot of revenge plot movies, doesn't he? That seems to be
Stolen.
Yeah, Con Air.
He likes it.
He loves that. He really.
Here's a question I have related to the revenge plot of it. Do you guys think, in your interpretation of the movie, there's the scene where he's beating up and hemming and hawing about killing James Gandolfini, and then he calls the mom, and then he's like getting the mom to tell him to do it as like foreplay to psych himself up into it.
The best scene.
Are we supposed to think that the reason he's so into the violence is because he's been exposed to all the violence? And if so, is that not the same logic where, like, the PMRC was trying to like ban violence because it's like, well, you see it and you do it?
I think that's definitely strongly implied. Yeah. I don't know if it's in the same exact way that you just described, but he's certainly sucked into this whole world. And
so I guess question one, is he only killing James Gandolfini because he's been seduced by the devil world of extreme porn?
No. His primary motive is revenge and a soft spot
I really think that you're supposed. I just rewatching it right now. Seemed to me that like you're supposed to get like a weird sexual vibe to him making the mom tell him to do it.
Oh yeah.
Because he's getting a cathartic sexual thing out of it, and that you're supposed to be like, oh no, how far he's fallen. This dark man. That's why he cries when he sees his baby later, because he knows he's a sick man who wants violence.
Well,
What do you think about that, Mike?
well, first of all, whenever we're talking about these types of things, we have to say spoiler alert. So
I don't think have we ever done that.
first thing, that's the first order of business. We can go and edit that in later. So in my response to this, I want to bring in Mr. Joaquin Phoenix, because his character, I think, actually really supports your interpretation of this, Adam. Because there's a scene earlier in the movie where Max California and and Nicolas Cage's character, because at that point, Nicolas Cage, like he'd watched the original 8mm and he'd seen a bunch of other stuff, and Max California, Joaquin Phoenix, is like, you may not be, you might not enjoy this, but you're not running away from it either.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. They're laying it out the whole movie.
Yeah. So So I think that would have been
the devil changes you, or whatever the fuck he says.
Yeah. So I think it's at that point, and the other part is that for some other interpretations, at the end, Machine. I think very clearly with Machine, the whole thing, like he finally takes off his mask and he's just like kind of a bald middle-aged man with glasses. I think very clearly the message there is that like there is evil that lives inside of all of us, and classic film noir, like everyone is capable of horrible things. So yeah, I think that James Gandolfini revenge murder from Nicolas Cage, I think that he definitely did that because he wanted to, and he enjoyed it.
That's what makes it funny to me, is like I'm saying, the logic that like exposure to it brings it out in people is why people try to like censor things, which is a big thing in the 80s, not the 90s. But then to me, it's funny that the movie is so like going out of its way to be like, show you all the dirty, nasty stuff, because it's like, yeah, seeing this stuff makes you do bad stuff. You know how you paid to see this stuff that you like seeing? You're going to do bad stuff now. And again, like I was saying before, I don't know if I think Joel Schumacher believes that, but I think it's kind of a funny, accidentally subversive thing to have a movie that, like, as Evan was saying, you see the preview and you're like, oh boy, I don't know if I can handle this. And then the movie's like, yeah, you can't handle this. Now you're going to like go kill animals or something because watching bad stuff makes you do bad stuff.
Well, okay. I feel like it might be a little bit more subtle than that. Right. Like, I mean, Nicolas Cage isn't just watching it. He is becoming completely absorbed in the element in order
that's
to
That's a semantic distinction right there, my friend. How do you decide whether you're watching something or absorbing something?
His job is to get absorbed. That's part of the movie, right? He's a pet dick. He's got to investigate this and figure these people out, get inside their head. And so he's not just watching this stuff as if like he's surveying evidence in a very sort of like, frank, logical manner. He's actively becoming part of the world. I mean, that's also indicated in the scene where he's in there were so many scenes that just made me really like just break laughing. The secret basement porn rummage sale, and him going around to all the various people, like super serious Nicolas Cage, like going with them a little bit more extreme. What are you looking for? I'm talking about snuff films. Get the fuck out of here. Like that. That's just hilarious.
But that's the funny thing. When he's in the basement, the guy's like, it doesn't exist. The first guy gets mad. And that's just rewatching it. I had forgotten that the first time he doesn't ask, he makes Joaquin Phoenix ask. He asks in Spanish, ¿Tienes películas de snuff?
This big urban myth, the basement LA porn scene.
I mean,
The elusive snuff film. I mean, it's not funny. It's like it's the least funny subject matter in the world.
Funny.
Like
It's funny.
it's too fucking funny. The idea that there's this like billionaire who, he had all this money and everything you could possibly want in the world, and all he wanted for Christmas was one measly little snuff film, and he got it, and the, the evil Silence of the Lambs lawyer, manipulates stupid Nicolas Cage. That's another funny thing in the movie. Like, you're supposed to think and know his character is stupid, right? He's not like some savvy detective. He's sort of a dumb detective. And that's not just me saying, it's like a parent. You're supposed
Well,
to
he
think
says it at the end directly. He's like, you seem like a young idiot. I didn't think you were going to actually get anywhere with this.
he lights James Gandolfini on fire.
And yells, die, die, die.
James Gandolfini, by the way, that's Oscar performance.
Oh, potent.
He is so good in this movie.
Yeah, this is a rare Nicolas Cage doing his mega acting movie where many others are at that level. James Gandolfini's at that level. Peter Stormare is at that level. Joaquin Phoenix isn't really at that level. Joaquin Phoenix is kind of being a little more serious than the movie warrants. But that's why he went on to be one of the great actors of our generation.
Well, yeah, and his like prominence in the movie is funny in itself. Wait, is the other guy?
I will say real quick. Okay, so back to what I was saying about like Nicolas Cage watching stuff, making him get into doing violent things. It's almost like, because like Joaquin Phoenix has been living that life for years, and he is as horrified by the snuff film as anything, which to me, and again, this I don't think is deliberate text of the movie, but watching it, thinking about that this time, I was like, it's like Joaquin Phoenix got vaccinated by small doses over time, so he can watch snuff films and still have an appropriate reaction, but basic bitch, suburban dad Nicolas Cage immediately has a switch flipped because he can't control it, because he's never had any of that perverse stuff. That's why it's important to give yourself perverse stuff in small doses consistently. So if you ever accidentally see a snuff movie, you won't immediately go out and rape them.
The slippery slope, slippery slope. You start with those small doses, and before you know it, you're teaming up with Dino Velvet.
Oh yeah, that's another funny thing. So again, it's very condemnatory, and it makes it seem like the porn world is just nothing but exploitation and people just wrecked lives and things like that. But and I will mention, this is discussed in the Suspense is Killing Us episode where they talk about 8mm. But this is not, they didn't come up with this. It's generally regarded that Peter Stormare is modeled after porn filmmaker Gregory Dark of the Dark Brothers, most famous for the New Wave Hooker series, but who later went on to music videos such as Zoot Suit Riot by the Cherry Papa Daddies and shitty DTV horror movies. But funny that like a movie so condemnatory about pornography would then also go out of its way to like reference the like appearance and manner of a noted pornographic filmmaker. Again, going back to what I'm saying about where it's like, having your cake and eating it too, where it's like, oh, this bad fucked up stuff, like that one guy who we all recognize what we're doing here, right? You guys watching a porn that what the filmmakers look and sound like, right?
I don't feel like Joel Schumacher gives a shit about condemning porn.
I know, but that's why it's funny, because how you can't watch that movie and not come up with the text movie being like, wow, what a bad fucked up thing. But again, I agree. I don't think he does either. And I did want to bring up, there's that amazing interview he did like not long before he died. I think it was this year in like Vulture or Vanity Fair or something. It's a really great interview, his whole career, but it's in the Me Too times and stuff, and that comes up. And he just kind of like goes off about how he's been sexually active since he was 11. He's had like 20,000 plus sexual partners, and like never. And they were like, so do you consider yourself like that you were exploited or abused when you're having sex as a young boy? And he was like, no, I was a very seductive child. Many children are quite seductive. So that just lets you know Joel Schumacher's opinions on this kind of stuff does not align at all with what one would take from this movie in isolation at face value.
Well, this goes back to the previous comment about Joel Schumacher just being a filmmaker, like filmmaker for hire.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking about a lot watching it this time.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I didn't think. I mean, like they're pretty clear you're not really talking about porn. Like he quickly tries to go into you're supposed to think this is the dirtiest, seediest.
But it's very clear, and they have a whole, like you're talking about, there's the progression, which is implied that like this is the logical nadir of it, because they're like, well, you got your bestiality and your child stuff,
Oh
and like
yeah, just the old bestiality. No, but
and then it progresses to that. It's not made out to be, and then like that's the thing. They hire the porn guy to do it. Oh yeah, I wrote down what they say about him. I forgot that I have a couple things I wrote down. When he first is like, his name's D Velvet, and he's like, oh yeah, Dino Velvet. He refers to him as the Jim Jarmusch of S&M.
Well, I hesitate to open this Pandora's box, but you always take a very favorable, almost like academic stance on pornography. And I've often felt like you are talking about a very tiny sliver of porn. And
I by no means claim to be aware of the totality of pornography, which is fractally expanding by the second.
The question is, do you think, it's funny, like James Gandolfini's character, before you find out his role in the snuff film, just this normal, like this fat, sweaty, skis guy in a Hawaiian shirt sitting in some dirty office with a line of like broke women waiting to come in and like, maybe get $50. I think that's really how it kind of is.
Do you know that based on any knowledge of pornography production in your life?
I mean, I got my sources, Go into
your
that.
sources are like 8mm.
Yeah. 8mm was the first pornographic movie I've ever seen.
Well, did you see? What about Orgasmo?
Oh, I did see Orgasmo, yeah. So I know from that,
My argument would always be that it's no more exploitative than the entertainment industry or most industries in general, and that no one is confused about what's going on in porn. People have this idea that people are like tricked into doing porn, which I'm sure in a small percentage of cases that has happened, but that's certainly not normative.
But that's unethical, right? I mean, in any profession, that's unethical. Like we have this come up with research, right? So you're not allowed to do research on subjects who will take whatever you give them because they're desperate. That's exploitative and it's illegal. So it's interesting why that's not illegal in the entertainment industry.
Wait, what are you saying should be illegal? I don't know what you're referring to here.
So like, for instance, there are ethical standards in other professions and industries. Like, it seems like the argument you're making is that like, yeah, whatever, it's exploitative, but like everybody knows what's going on, right? These people want the money. They know everybody knows what's going to happen. You go in there and mess around with James Gandolfini, you get your $50. Everybody's happy. That's not legal in other areas. Like I, as a researcher, couldn't say, I really want to collect some data on crackheads. And I know they'll let me measure their data and take my survey because they're desperate for $10. I can't go do that, right? I can't do that. I can't go and collect sensitive data from like prison populations. You know what I mean? Like, so that's
what you're doing a classic thing, which is presuming that people involved in porn are like, drug addicts or
yes,
people.
They are. They are.
I'm sure some of them are, just like they are. Like, does that mean that people shouldn't like hire drug addicts to work in a fast food restaurant for minimum wage?
Because that's the same as porn, sex work. Sure, there are lots of exceptions. There are lots of very empowered, happy, healthy people who do this and they make money and they enjoy it. But that is not I would contend that is, I would suspect.
And that is based on what research?
I don't have like, a representative sample survey and detailed ethnographic study of this, but I would bet good money that I'm describing is probably at least 70% of the industry.
What you're describing is certainly the cliche, puritanical, guilt view of it.
Puritanical about it. It's just empirical.
People doing sex work, it must be bad and fucked up. I don't have any research, but I have my feelings and my feelings.
I'm not making any kind of ethical, puritanical judgment whatsoever. I'm just saying, like, this is what exploitation.
They're drug addicts. That's not a value judgment, but they're pathetic drug addicts who are desperate for money.
I know.
So Adam, wait. So are you saying, Adam, that just I want to make sure that I'm accurately characterizing your the opinions that are being discussed here. Evan, so what you're saying is that the people that get into pornography, there's an exploitative, quality of what's happening, which is why they're in those films. And what Adam, are you saying that more commonly, or maybe perhaps in the vast majority of cases, that people who are in pornos are doing it of sound mind, and they are exercising their agency, and they are not doing out of any sort of desperation?
Thank you, Mike.
I'm sure as much as any job, some people do it out of desperation, but I don't think that means that it should be any more illegal than other jobs people do out of desperation, aka most jobs.
Mm-hmm.
No.
And I think the idea that it isn't is tied into like weird sex ideas that I know Evan has.
No. That's incredibly naive. Nobody aspires.
Incredibly naive.
Most people don't.
It's incredible how naive it is.
And it's not like other legal jobs. This is something you do when there are no more legal options for you to explore.
Says you, according to what? Based on what?
I wanted to jump in real quick, Evan. Like your audio is coming across as pretty muffled.
Oh, I'm too far away.
Yeah.
That's really what you said. But end of argument. I went, we've been down this road before, Adam.
I enjoy it. This is what I love. I'll do this forever. I don't think it's resolved. I still honestly don't understand what you think makes it different than what I'm talking about. Sincerely.
What makes what different?
What makes choosing to be employed in the performance of pornography versus other shitty jobs that people take out of desperation?
It's usually a last-ditch effort, and even those other shitty jobs are not
but like, okay, let's take that as a given, just for the sake of debate. Let's say yes, someone took it as the last-ditch effort. Why is that any worse than a different shitty non-sex work job that they take as a last-ditch effort?
Oh, you're protected for one, right? Like, I mean,
you don't think that there's a regulated industry? Do you have any idea?
There's a lot of underground.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I do have to believe that the porn industry is highly regulated, but I would question how closely those regulations are followed and enforced.
And let me think. Let's think about all the other industries that 100% adhere to the safety regulations that's required of them. Like I'm sure all other entry-level jobs do.
Yeah.
This is a fundamentally bad argument. We never started out trying to compare work in the adult film industry with other jobs.
Yeah, because you just want to say what you think and say it's right without any debate.
No. The contention is that the exploitation that occurs in this particular line of work is much worse than the exploitation that occurs.
And that's what I'm saying. Based on what?
I want to say, Evan. I want to jump in on that with a particular hypothetical. So let's take like somebody's a fast food worker versus somebody who's working in the adult film industry. It's like fast food. If it's exploitative, okay, you instead of working 40 hours a week, you work 50 hours a week and you don't get overtime pay. I feel like that's like kind of a more of the run-of-the-mill type of exploitation. Where I feel like in the adult film industry, it could be something like you sign up for just a pure, naked photos. And then you get there, and then the next thing you know, the guy's like, well, actually, this is going to be, an actual sex scene. And I feel like that type of exploitation, where people will sign up for one thing, and then once they actually get into that setting, it's like, well, actually, it's going to be something completely different. I feel like that would be the type of exploitation that I would be thinking of, and the gravity of that is more significant than like being exploited in a different industry where your labor is not being compensated. So that would be my thought.
Yeah, and I want to make clear, I am not expressing any sort of like, I have nothing wrong with people wanting to create this kind of entertainment. I don't think it's the best thing to be consumed on a widespread basis.
Why is that?
This is more of a hunch that I had, because it's incredibly like indulgent and not productive. I mean,
like, what's wrong with that? Why is being productive better than being not productive?
Well, it's sort of like my argument with pot, right? So if people could successfully moderate, that's one thing. But the fact that porn makes up like 80% of internet content shows me that that's not something that we're able to really moderate as a society.
Because some people can't control themselves. No one should get to do it.
No, I mean, like that's a fair argument. Like, I'm not saying it should be banned or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, I'm not sure it's the best way to use our entertainment resources as a society. I think it does a lot more harm than good, I would
And
say.
what is the harm that it does?
I just rattled off like 3 things, right? Like
Lack of productivity. You think that America could be more, our GDP would go up if people weren't watching porn?
Talking about personal level shit, right? Like it encourages you to be more isolated. It gives people like unrealistic expectations about sex. It's too powerful. It's too powerful from like a brain chemical standpoint. It is. It is.
I mean, I think I agree. I agree that you are right in your own case. I think this is more about you.
I mean, I couldn't have said that. I really now posted, but that's all right. You know, I buttered my bread. I'm prepared to sleep in it. But I just want to make clear, this isn't because I'm some sort of like sweeping ethical judgment about porn. I differ with you on its overall merits, and like
it sounds pretty sweeping and pretty ethical.
There's no ethical to it. I don't think it's bad. It's just I don't think most human brains are.
You just think it's more exploitative somehow.
Well, I just want to chime in. I think to your point, I just want to say I just want to chime in because I actually agree with Evan's point here, where I think that overconsumption of pornography is a bad thing.
And do you think that is the fault of pornography for existing, or the individual for not being able to control their own behavior?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be more towards the individual not controlling their own behavior. So,
right. But
you know, some people drink too much, so let's have prohibition again.
But the thing, Adam, though, is like nobody here is arguing that pornography should be illegal or should be banned or should be regulated.
But we have common sense policies and programs to regulate consumption of alcohol, tobacco, firearms, other drugs. It's the same thing.
Wait, how is alcohol consumption regulated? You can drink as much as you want.
Well, you have to be 21 to drink.
I mean, you have to be 21. You have
to be 18 to buy pornography.
You can't bring alcohol into most places. You can't, do certain things at a bar. It's heavily regulated. What are you talking about?
I mean, if you want to drink, you can drink as much as you want, is what I'm saying. Consumption, if you just want to consume alcohol, nothing stops you from doing that until you die, is what I'm saying.
True, but that doesn't mean
you can't do it in public, just like you can't masturbate in public.
Initially, you said it's not regulated. I'm just telling you it's heavily regulated.
I'm saying one's ability to consume alcohol is not regulated.
That's correct. One's ability to consume it privately while in your own home is not regulated. That's right. That's a very narrow.
Which I don't know if you know this. That's how most people also experience pornography, is a load in their room.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, that's the whole part. That's the whole thing that makes it like problematic. It's like it encourages you to just live in this like isolated little fantasy world.
Hey, I agree with you that pornography should still be exhibited theatrically, and that would be better for everybody. And I have been to theatrical pornography, and it's way better. It's a powerful experience.
Let me applaud you. And I have no problem with anybody who enjoys porn in the way that you do. I think that's fine. That's how it's meant to be enjoyed.
Thank you.
I have a problem with the like just.
Can you make me some kind of badge that I can wear to let people know I'm allowed to enjoy porn?
Yeah, you're like
sheriff's badge.
It's like going to the art museum for you. You're looking at weird special cultural shit. Like whatever. That's
you say so. I by no means make those kind of designations, but I'll take it.
Well, I, as someone who's never looked at porn, feel like
You should check it out. I'll send you some links.
Send me some links. Send me the good stuff, the Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage. Oh, man. I mean, I'm already very happy with the way this. I knew this particular movie would lead to a discussion like this. And so.
When you get great minds together, only great things can come out.
So I want to just make change the direction of the conversation real quick. Is talk make another one of my non sequitur comparisons, and I want to make I want to bring in Mr. Show here, because there was the episode when they had like the Ma and Pa, like the family porno store. Yeah. And Tom Kenny is like, getting quarters and whatnot. And there was a line that Joaquin Phoenix had where I think his line was, "Hey, this isn't a gas station. You have to pay
before you pump." Yeah, I because like I remember watching it. You're like, that is not a thing that character would actually say. That's a funny line someone thought of that they had to throw in there.
Okay.
Can you imagine jacking off in a place like that and someone's like, "Hey, you pay before you bump."
Hey, quit jacking off over there. He's jacking off in the aisle. I wanted to ask a question about that. That maybe either of you might know, probably not Mike, but maybe. Is that a thing? Like you go into the porno store and you sample the goods? People are like,
Well, they have
masturbating?
booths. It's not as common these days, but some big adult stores would have booths where you could like pay to watch loops or check something out.
For the
And
express-
generally,
Yeah.
generally, it is correct that you're not on paper supposed to masturbate in the booth. You're just supposed to watch it, but leave and masturbate. But in practicality, that's not how it worked out a lot of the time.
Yeah, there was because going back in Main Street in our hometown of Racine, Wisconsin, there was a place called Racine News, which for many years I assumed was actually a legit newspaper competitor to the Racine Journal Times.
You went in there one day like, "I'm here for the news, please."
Yeah, and actually, to further get off topic, is I remember being 12, 13, 14 years old in Madison, going on State Street after going to Badger games, being like, "State Street Arcade, huh? Well, when I have more time, I'm gonna have to go in there and play some Pac-Man." So I guess
Also red letter news. It's always the news. They're always like, "News here, get your news."
So credit to Racine News and State Street Arcade for having those discrete titles. But I do know that in Racine News, that they did have a booth there for sampling, and apparently there was a very clear sign that said no masturbating.
Yeah, that's how it usually went.
Yeah, but that's
And then, I don't know if you guys have seen Paris, Texas. Yes, no.
Been a while. Nick
The pivotal scene in Paris, Texas, where he reconnects with his ex-wife or whatever, and she works in a live stripping booth in a place like that where you pay to like see a live person and you can talk to them and tell them what you want to see,
yeah.
which is the far end of the porn booth operations.
Yeah. Well, I have to imagine that some of those places still very much exist, because it does seem like adult stores on interstates are still alive and well.
The internet in general just like stomped a boot in the face of retail pornography for sure. There are still plenty of porn stores. I'm sure there are some with booths, but compared to how it was pre-internet, it's a fraction of all industries that were had the profitability sucked out of them by the internet. Pornography is number one.
I miss the days where you could just you go into the video store and you start off slow. You pick up the latest Sinbad, Tom Hanks, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You get a whiff of that. It's like a mix of like dust and cleaner and a little bit of mold, and you're close to the back area. Pull the curtain back. Get yourself one of those big box porns, big VHS box.
They love
Got
those.
Couple of blonde bimbos on the cover. You're good to go. Take it up to the front. The guy knows what you want.
My favorite normal movie store porn section anecdote is related to a story told to me by an old girlfriend of mine who worked at Waterfront Video in Burlington, Vermont. And she worked there when we were in high school. I think she was 16 or 17. She was not 18. But, they had a porn section. And sometimes in the afternoon, she would be the only clerk. Oh, sorry, I have an alarm going off. Interesting.
Oh, Apple's got you by the short curly.
And one time, so sometimes there was times in the afternoon when she'd be the only clerk there, meaning if you wanted to check out, you had to go give your videos to her or you couldn't check out. And during one of those times, the father of one of her friends came in the store and kind of awkwardly, as Evan described, milled around, picked up some Tom Hanks movie and slowly worked his way to the back. And she was like, oh boy, because she knew she was the only one there for hours. And she was like, there's no way he's going to rent porn and not hand it to me, his daughter's friend, And then he went back there, picked out his big stack, and then kind of killed time, just assuming some other person that was an adult or a man or not his daughter's friend would show up. And that didn't happen. And you would kind of think maybe he'd be like, fuck it, I'm just going to rent the Tom Hanks movie, come back at the porn another time. But no, the power, as Evan has proven to us, the power of porn. He went up to her and said, like, here's a bunch of porn, please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that doesn't really happen with other forms of entertainment, does it? You know, it's like,
well, that's because of puritanical views about what's acceptable to watch. It shouldn't be a problem. That shouldn't be awkward.
yeah, and it's because of the effect, the porn's effect on the brain, right? Like the common sense thing for that guy to do would be to just not get the porn right then.
Assuming that getting porn is something to be embarrassed about.
Well, is it? Would you be embarrassed to rent a porn?
Number one, I wouldn't have a daughter that
Right.
would have friends there. And if you work at the store, no, I would not. I have rented porn from video stores, of course, many times.
Are you gonna make a 16-year-old girl will look at that shit and check out the box?
They don't care. Besides the fact that it was her friend's dad, she had no qualms about it. She took a special interest in curating the section and put a whiteboard up where people could write suggestions for the kind of thing they wanted more of there.
You know what? I wanted to just actually does make me think of something. If you go to a grocery store, I think we've all had this experience before where you go to a grocery store and somebody's 16, 17 years old, and they're checking you out, like you want to get your 12 pack of PBR or whatever, and then the person ringing them out has to like call over a manager to actually scan the alcohol because they're not old enough to scan it. I guess I would say that I'm a bit surprised that like a 16-year-old would be allowed to, check out adult entertainment.
I have no idea if on paper it's legal, but again, like what you take up to the counter is a box that says, like Anal Acrobat 77 or something like that. It does not. You're not taking literal product in most video stores. You're not taking the box up to the counter anyway. But I have no idea if that was, officially how it's supposed to be or not, or if it was incidental that she happened to be under 18 when she worked.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Well,
So I want to get back to 8mm because I have a thought about just to go back to our previous discussion about Nicolas Cage, being corrupted by this world of extreme adult films. Here is that I feel like what was pretty clear throughout the movie is that Nicolas Cage, his character, that he was a chameleon that really didn't truly have his own identity. And he was somebody who was kind of dishonest because he'd be calling up hospitals and be like, oh, I'm the lieutenant. And he'd always be masquerading as somebody else. So I feel like his absence of having, a true personality or true agency allowed him to embody the essence of the underworld that he was in.
But I mean, it's a recurring thing in the movie that he does a horrible job of that, and Joaquin Phoenix brings it up all the time. That he's horrible at blending in with it, and he's not even trying. He's like, whatever, if I ask for snuff, they'll give me snuff. And Joaquin Phoenix is like, whatever you say, man.
Well, so that's something I actually when I watched it, I did something I did not pick up on, or I did not pick up on if he was supposed to be a bad private detective or if that was just kind of a lack of quality of the movie.
I mean, Joaquin Phoenix brings it up in dialogue repetitively that he looks like a cop and is making no attempt to, be a chameleon and blend in at all. Yeah. And he rejects the idea that he should even need to do that. He's like, if I got money, they'll give me the snuff.
Yeah, but okay, so he's bad at what he does, but I feel like he's still, that still doesn't change change him being being somebody who is does not have the integrity and is still susceptible to being influenced by it.
I mean, yeah, I would say.
I think the point I'm trying to get at is Nicolas Cage in the movie is being portrayed as an empty vessel.
For sure, I agree with that. And to me, There are two things I don't like in this movie, which, say what you will about how goofy it is. I do really have a good time. There are two things I do not like at all. One is every single scene with Catherine Keener and the baby, which is funny because like you'd think like, oh, that's supposed to show he's like a wholesome, normal guy, but really it just kind of seems like it sucks and they don't get along. And it's what you're saying, where it's kind of like an empty, hollow thing. And the other thing, which is not as related to what you're saying, but the only other thing that I hate about this movie, I think is the worst part of the movie, is I think the score of the movie is horrible. I think it is either forgettable and generic or like jarringly, like just outright like wrong for the scene. And there's all that like Arabian jam, like stuff where you're like, why? How is this what's correct? And then I looked that guy up. I was like, who did this? Who is guilty of this crime? Some guy I've never heard of who won an Oscar for the score to Life of Pi and has gone on to much success and acclaim. But like, I really think if there's one thing wrong with the movie, it's the score.
Yeah, I remember that when I was watching the credits too, because that just that was completely incompatible with.
Yeah, it's jarringly inappropriate.
They should have had some like, I don't know, some like KMFDM or something. Playing.
Well, and they played "Come to Daddy" by Aphex Twin several times, which is appropriate. Yeah. Although I will say they show the center label of the record when he's at the Machine's house, and that is not the center label of "Come to Daddy." I don't know what record they got on there, but it's not "Come to Daddy."
I want to bring this conversation to music here for a second. I could not tell you anything about Danzig. It's Danzig like at either now or ever, was that like known as like a satanic, like evil metal
it's
band?
A cartoony for kids satanic thing that some adult Johnson men still hold near and dear to their hearts.
Not me.
I'm not naming names.
I mean, but you mean like the name Danzig? What, like that's rooted in some kind of satanic lore?
No. I mean well, first of all, Danzig that's the name of the band, right?
Glenn Danzig.
Glenn Danzig was in the Misfits, and then he went solo and just called himself Danzig.
Okay, got it.
But Danzig is also. I mean, I don't have. I'm going to make a quasi. I'm going to state some quasi information, but I believe Danzig is the name of some fictional satanic character, some demon.
I would believe it, but I don't know either.
Mm-hmm. We'll have to look that up.
But I will say that the idea that like the Machine would like obsessively listening to "Come to Daddy" by Aphex Twin and have nothing but Danzig posters all over his walls is, I'm not saying it's because it's like nothing but Danzig. When you look in that room, it's like 50 Danzig things, and then the only song he puts on is "Come to Daddy" by Aphex Twin.
Well, I don't know that I wouldn't associate Danzig with the snuff.
I'm not saying that I do either. I think both of those things are funny things. Those are both funny, dark things to have in a movie, but I don't think they're harmonious, dark things that a person would forget.
This is the classic, like, guys in the Hollywood boardroom in suits, just like, yeah, we got together, some stuff for the set. We got this Danzig crap, some sick shit. I don't know. I like to think about that.
They're trying, and what I'm saying is that they're trying slightly harder with the Aphex Twin. Someone actually was like, "Wow, this song is pretty crazy, and we were going to abuse it heavily in this movie." Yeah. Whereas Danzig, they're like, "I don't know." I mean, who knows? Maybe Joel Schumacher liked all those shirtless Danzig photos and was like, "Yeah, let's get more of these up around here."
Danzig's not extreme. He's just a rocker.
That's what I'm saying. That's what's funny about it.
Right. Yeah. There's lots of little funny, stupid stuff.
Well, but here's the thing. So he's Machine, he is he's being portrayed as like, hey, I'm just a regular normal guy. I have a 9 to 5, but I like to kill people type deal. That's the message of the character. The evil lives in all of us. So to keep on with that theme, then wouldn't it make more sense if like the posters that he had in his room were like whatever was popular at the time?
Absolutely.
So have like a Mighty Mighty Boss Tones poster. And like that's they're listening to some Royal Oil, as they break in, or maybe like
there's lots of beautiful confusion in the movie.
Yeah.
And in the Suspense is Killing Us episode about it, they bring up a lot how it seems like the script for the movie was leaning into like, well, and it could be anybody. These aren't like special different people. Anyone has this capacity. But then like when they made the movie, they muddled that idea, like we're saying, where like it should have been could be cohesive with that idea. It should have been what Mike said, where it's the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones. But then they were like, no, we're gonna go dark.
And the guy is a rejected failure. Like he's the
Like we all are. That's the human
he actually lives with his mom, right? I mean, like he's failed, right? So that's again part of the confusion. He's not just anybody, right?
Yeah.
Like they try to make that argument with the dialogue, but his characteristics and like where he lives suggests like, now this is kind of a victim of society, and this is like what
I mean, I think you're supposed to. I think the reason that he lives with his mom is you're supposed to be like, well, how fucked up can a guy be? He still lives with his mom, and they show him like hugging her and waving when she goes to church. I think the idea that they are not going for pathetic, they're going for like, oh, he's a family guy, him and his elderly mother, and she goes to church, and they're happy together. I think that's supposed to be the counterpoint that they're going for. I'm not saying it works, but I think that's why it's
that's another personal difference, because I think I'm a lot more alarmed by the idea of a 40-year-old male living with his mom and having kind of like Seymour Skinner relationship.
That is true. It has a the psycho undertone of it.
I don't think there's anything in the movie indicating that's what is.
You may be right. I don't have a hard stance. I just
Do we know those? I just want to explore it real quick, because like, I mean, Psycho, of course. I mean, Norman Bates, I think, was kind of a weird guy, but generally.
Guys, do you think Norman Bates is a little weird? I'm not sure. Maybe
I know what you meant. You mean like he was? It was a similar thing that he was a little quirky, but he was supposed to be,
But I think that's why when he makes the machine takes his mask off, he goes out of his way to be like, my mother didn't abuse me. That's specifically in response to Psycho style, psychology. He's saying like, I had a totally normal life.
Sure. Yeah. Who knows? That's what the best
He doesn't
movies
actually live with his mom in Psycho, to be clear. I don't know if you guys, you've seen Psycho. No spoilers. He doesn't literally live with his mother.
Well, I mean, at one point they did.
Emphasis on live with his mother.
Yeah. It's something about the movie that I did find confusing is that I had a hard time keeping track of where they were.
Yeah, it's very funny. They go back and forth from New York to LA like 20 times in the movie, and they only show him on an airplane once.
Joaquin Phoenix comes with them.
Yeah, and I want to know, so like Joaquin Phoenix saying he only flies first class, probably a joke, but then I'm like, did they sit together on the plane? Did Nicolas Cage or Joaquin Phoenix go first class? Did nobody go? Because the old lady's paying for it, so you kind of might as well go first class. I would have liked a shot of them both in first class, but not sitting together, because Nicolas Cage doesn't want to sit next to smelly Joaquin Phoenix, and Joaquin Phoenix is taking all the free first class stuff, and Nicolas Cage has his Matrix glasses on, trying to be cool. Missed opportunity. Could have been a 2.5-hour movie with all the plane scenes they missed out on.
It was also short. I could have used another.
It's over 2 hours.
It is?
That's correct, sir.
Why did I think it was? I thought it was
because it's fun, and time flies when you're having fun.
It's true. I mean, this movie was a real joy. I was pleasantly surprised. I was
cut out all the stuff with him and Kathleen Keener. It would be 90 minutes, and it would be perfect.
Why did they put that shit in there? I don't know. That was upsetting to me too. I'm not even sure why.
Oh, I also like that smoking is his secret vice that you're supposed to be like, ooh, but he smokes.
Yeah. Well, what's the Catherine Keener scenes were so redundant. It was the same fucking thing every time.
I bet that, and again, this is, I'm cribbing from Suspense is Killing Us discussion. They postulated that didn't even feel like it was in the original screenplay, that they decided to do that after, because they're so underbaked. There's like nothing to them. Just like, love you, miss the baby. This scene could be cut out and it doesn't affect anything. Okay, bye.
They didn't develop that enough. It's just like, well, it's just so stupid. I don't know what, it's like, eccentric billionaire, mysterious 8mm film. Somehow, Nicolas Cage is a pet dick with a baby.
Oh yeah, and then at the end, and this is something that this time I had the captions on from when I was falling asleep watching things last night, and I don't know if I'd ever even registered this without the captions on, but at the end when he comes back, sees the baby and is crying, and Catherine Keener's like, what? And she hugs him and he whispers, "Save me," which is the most embarrassing thing ever in the history of cinema.
Well,
Save me. And then you're like, well, what is she supposed to do? Just keep nagging you about the cigarettes? Like, what is that referring to?
Right. We've already had this conversation 50 times.
Whatever it is, it doesn't happen because then he's just raking the leaves. He gets the letter and the movie's over.
Yeah.
So what did you make of the scene when Nicolas Cage says, "I love you," and Catherine Keener doesn't respond?
That's a recurrent thing in the scenes that makes it confusing, where it's like they don't even have that good of a relationship and they're kind of like on the outs with each other, which is like, then like, really, what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's not, it's just bad. Like their whole dynamic is not put together at all.
Yeah.
That was a Batman and Robin moment for sure.
Yeah, it was. And it was a little bit, listen, it also, I cannot resist making free associations here, so I'm going to continue. It did, in terms of just being kind of tacked on and superfluous, reminded me a little bit of Pierce Brosnan's relationship with his girlfriend in The Lawnmower Man.
I barely even remember that in The Lawnmower Man, so I think you're probably right.
Yeah.
Only if it was as egregious as it is in 8mm, I would remember it because it would make me mad. Like the Catherine
So actually, Lawnmower Man did a much better job of that though, because like it is like they split up like 30 minutes into the movie.
Or wait, are you talking about how, like, with Jenny Wright, the neighbor, or is there a different relationship?
No, because Pierce Brosnan was living with his girlfriend.
Okay, yeah, and then Jenny Wright is not his girlfriend; she's the neighbor. I for a second was thinking he's married, and then he like cheats on her with Jenny Wright next door. But you're right.
In Lawnmower Man, though, Jenny Wright was then like started getting with the Lawnmower Man himself,
Yeah,
and then they go into that like insect simulation, and it like breaks her brain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, breaks her brain. Tell you what, I really enjoyed Lawnmower Man. I think we talked about this one previously.
Fine. I enjoy all the films of Brett Leonard. Brett Leonard is an all hits through his theatrically released studio movies.
What did he do besides Lawnmower Man and Virtuosity?
Hideaway
Mm-hmm.
with Jeff Goldblum and Alicia Silverstone,
Mm-hmm.
and that might be it. It's a holy trinity.
I appreciate filmography like that, where people make like just a couple movies. And they're all really good. I feel like Jan de Bont was kind of similar with like Twister and Speed being pretty good.
But then he did like the Haunted House remake movie that was horrible.
Yeah, we can forget that. So maybe that was.
But that's what I'm saying. You don't have to forget any of Brett Leonard's major studio theatrical releases.
Yeah, I mean he had some good. I feel like Russell Crowe and Virtuosity is some of his best work.
Russell Crowe and Virtuosity is another Mike on New Year's performance, just like Chuck Connors and Devin Small Doses. Yeah. That should be a category for the Mike's Movie Podcast Academy Awards, is the most Mike on New Year's performance.
That's the highest honor one can achieve.
Yeah. Well, I'm just trying to think about this particular motion picture. If there's anything with 8mm that we have not uncovered, or important plot points.
I have two notes left. They're both related to things that I think the movie is trying to do that other things did better. The first that came to mind is the idea of like any normal person having this fucked up capacity to do like, evil violence, which one of my favorites in the modern era is Prisoners with Wolverine guy. What's that guy's fucking name?
Hugh Jackman?
With Hugh Jackman, the Denis Villeneuve Hugh Jackman movie, which is one of that and Enemy with Jake Gyllenhaal were the two movies that make me very sad that Denis Villeneuve is now stuck in franchise hell with Blade Runner and Dune for all eternity. Because when he did Prisoners and Enemy, I was like, wow, a talented guy doing creative genre movies in Hollywood. What a blessing. Like, nope, we're going to have him rehab. We're going to have him do elevated remakes for the rest of his life. Oh, and then the second was the portrayal of the extreme end of pornography as just like an evil way to just like destroy people. There's an arc in the miniseries Too Old to Die Young, Nicholas Winding Refn's miniseries for Amazon, where the whole arc of the show is about kind of this vigilante guy who's hired to kill people that are, you know, doing bad, fucked up stuff. And one of the people he's sent to kill are these people that just make, like, you know, rape porn. And it's like there's one like 5-minute scene about them, which shows nothing explicit at all. There's no violence shown. And it's like, it was completely harrowing. I'll never watch it again. I think about it all the time. And it does such a better job of getting at what they're trying to do, which is make it seem like, oh my God, is this what porn is like? This is horrible.
Wait, what film is that? Is that it?
It's a mini series called Too Old to Die Young that Nicholas Winding Refn did for Amazon a year or two ago.
And that was something that you found jarring.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. There's nothing explicit about it. There's like, you know, you don't see any violence at all, but just the way they do it and the way it's acted, it was just, I was like, Jesus Christ. I think it's like episode 5. I forget which episode it is, but
Yeah. See, now I'll tell you what. If you have that reaction to it, then I feel like there's something to it.
and what I'm saying is, like, it's easy to try and go extreme with like showing something transgressive, and this doesn't. It's a dialogue scene between the guy who's making the movie and the person they've hired for it, and it's just the course of the conversation is that person realizing they're living the nightmare scenario Evan thinks every pornography film is, where they think they were doing one thing and they have now been tricked into something way beyond what they thought they were getting into, and that's all the scene is. And it's just done so. I overall think that miniseries isn't really great. It's not my favorite thing he did, but there's great parts in it, and that scene does one of the best jobs I can think of portraying that archetype, which 8mm is attempting to get at.
Yeah, but is it true though? Because like, I mean, we forget all the, you know, you think I have this position on porn, but I don't. But like,
You know, we can't see your face right now.
that's all right. You can see my whatever, my rug. But yeah, but 8mm is not about porn. It's about weird extreme shit that most porn viewers don't really care about.
But it's definitely making the connection that like one leads from the other, as previously discussed in
Well,
Spot.
let's think about, so like the end dialogue between the attorney and Nicolas Cage, another sort of like climactic, scene. Like there's that scene, and then there's the one with him and James Gandolfini, the reckoning scenes. And the attorney says something to the effect of like, you know why he did this? You know, because he can. And that to me spoke to something a little bit different than just like this guy, you know, just like watching porn. He got into some extreme shit. It's almost like I like to imagine the billionaire just not even being into porn at all. He's just like, I just want this. Who can make it for me? It's like a power thing, I guess.
For sure. And I think that is supposed to, that's deliberate. And that's why I think when the machine takes his mask off, it's supposed to contrast with him, where he's like, I just like it. I like the things I like. It's what I like to do, which is very different than what you're saying. I agree that they are making it what Evan said about the lawyer thing. I think you're totally right. We're supposed to think that the rich guy is just like bored with his ability to exert control in the world and wanted to do it in the most extreme way. And then there's supposed to also be guys like the machine that are like, I just like to do it.
I guess that's machine has a different, yeah.
Yeah. So do you think do you think that the movie is making the argument that there are the two perspectives? Some people do it because, you know, they have no more worlds left to conquer, so they're just going to do whatever they can.
I think that's a footnote. I think it's an interesting footnote, but I don't think the movie really leans into it. It's basically just that talk with the lawyer that gets at that.
Maybe so I will make the contention. I've only watched it once, so I'm not saying that I'm definitely right, but I don't think the movie really has anything to do with porn. I don't really think it's about that at all. I think that's just the backdrop for this weird sort of like dynamic.
I will agree. I agree that it's not the main point, but it definitely is drawing connections with it. But you are right that it is not the primary focus.
Yeah, now I really want to watch it again. So when I watched it, I can't believe it's more than 2 hours. I remember going by so fast.
It's like 2 hours, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I like stopped and rewound, and I had the subtitles. I was, it's like, I want to get another look, because I don't think it's really about that. I think it's more just about these, Nicolas Cage's character and this particular set of extreme people that he encounters that represent ideas about humanity. And porn is just sort of like extreme adult film is like, a backdrop for all of that, but it could have been something else. That's kind of how
I agree that what you're saying is the ultimate focus, the meta text of the movie, but especially in the middle of the movie where they're figuring out before they get to Dino Velvet, the movie is just wallowing in, pornographic iconography for the sake of titillating the audience, which we all enjoy.
Sure. I guess I don't remember that. Those scenes don't stick with me as much as like the beginning and end.
Because it's a transitional thing. Because like you're saying, the lawyer scene, the machine scene is the, kind of wrapping it up, bringing it all home scenes. And then I guess him saying "save me" to his wife is the end of those. But yeah. But I don't think it's completely incidental. I agree that it's not the main focus, but I don't think it's completely superfluous.
And it's the differing perspectives that make this such a wonderful, rich experience.
Oh yeah, and that does remind me one thing. And this wasn't even related to the podcast. The last time I rewatched this, like a year ago or something, 8 months ago, I was just thinking about like what a funny thing for him to make a movie about. And then I found an interview with him about it, because what I wanted to know was, does Joel Schumacher in reality believe that people are paying for snuff porn to be produced? Because as many characters in the movie bring up, widely regarded to be false. Everyone agrees people have recorded murder for fun. No one really believes that there is any kind of an organized profit industry to make it. And it gets brought up in the movie where I'm like, does he think this is real? And in an interview, he cites a book called Gods of Death or Death Gods or something, where he was like, I read this book, it's really fucked up. And I looked it up, and it looks like a piece of trash that some ex-cop wrote, because some ex-cop thought he saw a snuff movie in an undercover thing, and then someone found him and was like, people think that's not even real. You're like the only person that ever claims to have seen it. And then he was like, yes, I have, I'm an expert, and wrote a book about it. And it seems widely regarded to be made up nonsense, but Joel Schumacher read it and was affected by it. And it's from 1997, so who knows, maybe Andrew Kevin Walker, who wrote the movie, also was inspired by it, because the timeline would work out.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you'd have to think there'd be some close communication between Joel Schumacher and whoever wrote this.
Well, according to Suspense is Killing Us, guys, Andrew Kevin Walker was not as involved as he would have liked to have been, and I don't think is generally happy with the end product of the movie.
Oh, really? Well, that's a shame, because James Gandolfini, wow.
I'm sure he was happy with the casting, but I think he like I'm saying, if they're right that he had nothing to do with the Catherine Keener stuff, that alone would make you pretty mad if your script didn't have that kind of nonsense, and then that's in the movie.
Yeah.
Who knows? We'll have to find older versions of the script to find out.
I want to ask a podcast question. Could you talk about the Suspense is Killing Us? Are you, Adam, familiar with the How Did This Get Made podcast?
Yes, and I will charitably just say it's not for me. I know it exists.
You got to tell me more. We are not here for charity, Adam. We are here for. I
can't speak with any authority because this. I've heard
an episode. Hey, I'm going to jump in real quick. Sorry, I have never heard an episode of it, but it's just instinctively knowing what it's about. I already don't like it, because it's how did this get made? And I feel, this kind of gets back to why Outlaw Vern it has become one of my favorite critics who you alerted me to, is that he's listen, I watch these movies and I just have my reaction to them. I'm not being it's so bad it's good, or what were they thinking? It's just it's him watching a movie and just writing about it. And I feel this whole what were they thinking when they made this movie? Well, I just feel, I don't know, it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way.
It's a very popular perspective, and yeah, I think it's a toxic, destructive perspective to absorb art that way.
Well, and it's just kind of not new, right? I've heard of the podcast, I've never listened to it, but it's that's something isn't that Mystery Science Theater 3000? We've had this shit for decades.
That is a crucial distinction.
Yeah, but the idea, we're going to try to create.
I can't disagree harder. I understand how you would think that, and I think that that is not correct.
Listen, folks, I don't do my homework, okay? I don't know what I'm talking
Well,
about, but you know,
Because it's a crucial distinction, because the Mystery Science Theater, much like the kind of podcast where people are incredulous about these horrible movies, the Mystery Science Theater has many imitators, most of which do come from the kind of how did this get made perspective. And that's really a core thing that makes you appreciate Mystery Science Theater 3000, is that no one's, because to make those episodes, they watch those movies over and over. Like they actually,
okay,
they are making jokes about the movie, but they love those movies. And that is they are thankful for those movies, and that they are constantly seeking out more of it in a way that the other people are like, oh, can you believe this? Who would like this?
So it's a more robust objective.
Yeah, and I would even
go ahead, Mike.
I would even draw a bit of a Quentin Tarantino Grindhouse comparison of like MST3K coming from a place of like genuine enjoyment of the movies.
Well, naive Evan, you know what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Which is, in either way, I think the idea is very old, right? Like the idea of making a podcast about, let's just incredulously watch and comment on bad movies is very cliche at this point. And
How Did This Get Made is definitely one of the earlier progenitors of it in the podcast world. There are others, but that is definitely, by the sheer rote of the fact it shows you how big of a success it is.
yeah. I feel like there's other examples of this bullshit that we've had.
There's tons, but we don't need to give them the credit to even discuss them. They don't warrant being name dropped on our high-profile podcast.
Well,
That's not what we do here, guys.
We can edit this out of the podcast later. All that I'll say, again, I've not heard an episode of that podcast, but I do know they had an episode of How Did This Get Made, and Con Air was featured, and like Con Air is like a genuinely good movie. That that's not a movie that's there's nothing bad about it.
You're preaching to the choir.
So that's all I want to say. So I appreciate all films, and
as Nicolas Cage says in Con Air, guys, tie the yellow ribbon around the old oak tree, because this boy's coming home to his ladies, coming home forever.
Mama, I'm coming home.
And that's a wrap. Oh wait a minute.
Okay, well, I think now is the time. Listen, all that the podcast is up until this point is just a runway till we get to the part where we quantify.
Let me just make sure. I think I got through all my notes. Oh wait, no. Okay, one other note. Another thing I just liked is when James Gandolfini licks the gun. I love that. I think if a different director than Joel Schumacher made the movie, that wouldn't be in the movie. And that's the kind of subtle detail that I appreciated in the movie. It reminded me of when Chris Elliott kisses the gun in that episode of Get a Life, which is an animated GIF I cherish.
That's good. It reminds me of Kiefer. It reminds me of Kiefer Sutherland in Lost Boys.
Can you? I'm sorry. What did you say, Evan? I'm sorry. I cut you off there.
I was just saying that scene reminded me, like it harkened back to some of the things that Kiefer Sutherland's character does in The Lost Boys.
Because he holds it to his head, right? He's not like kissing it.
Yeah, but there's like some sexual stuff going on.
I wrote down that Peter Stormare as Dino Velvet really gave me strong Eric Wareheim vibes with that facial hair. It felt like Peter Stormare as Dino Velvet could have been a Tim and Eric bedtime story.
That character is so hilarious. Like everything he said was a pot of gold.
Okay, and that's it. Those are all my notes.
What is Eric Wareheim up to these days? I know Tim Heidecker seems to be.
Tim is so busy. I don't know what Eric is up to besides Tim and Eric stuff. They did have him and Eric had a different like fake medical show on Adult Swim called like something about our bodies or something. It was not very good. It seems I don't know, but like the more stuff him and Tim do, the more you can extrapolate like Bob and David as their careers diverge. You kind of get a sense for what they both brought to the equation. And with no evidence, with no actual firsthand evidence, I speculate that the Tim and Eric medical show that no one talks about or cares about, which is much more scatological and like saying, listing, made up slang words. I feel like that's the Eric Wareheim stuff, and it's not as funny. But besides that Tim and Eric offshoot, I don't know what he's up to. I hope they do more Tim and Eric bedtime stories. I thought that was a
Yeah, that's the last
whole
I want.
evolution
Yeah.
that I couldn't get enough of, and I'm sad that we haven't had more already.
It's just 2 seasons, right? Bedtime
As
story.
far as I know.
That's good stuff.
Well, so it's kind of, this is, but the reason why people pay big money to get a subscription to listen to this podcast is they can get the final cheeseburger rating here. And again, we have all of really, like I say this all the time, all of the words, like when you talk about something, when you write about something, all that you're really doing is quantifying it.
Yeah, a cheeseburger is worth 1,000 words. That's the old saying.
Yeah, that's how it goes. So as is tradition, how many cheeseburgers do you give this one, Adam?
Well, based on what I just said, why don't you go back through this podcast, count how many words I said, divide it by 1,000. That's how many cheeseburgers.
Okay, that would we can do this. I'll have to hire a stenographer for that.
Yeah, get one of those get a clicky thing.
Yeah, listen, I'm gonna give this one. I'm gonna give this one to Evan to start off with a ranking.
I can never remember if it's out of 4 or 5.
It's out of 4. It's out of 4.
So 4 is the max cheeseburgers.
Yeah.
If you're following the rules.
I don't know how to not give it. I don't know how to give it anything but a 4. It's just that, like of all the movies, I don't watch that many movies, and so I try to be real picky about the ones I do watch. So most of them end up being good because they've been suggested.
Yeah.
But it's rare that I'm that into a movie, like seeing it the first time, watching it by myself. So
I can't remember, what were the rankings of the classics? Like what was Dr. Zhivago and
3s and 4s.
Yeah.
But they weren't all 4s.
all
So the rating system, 8mm is better than like Bridge Over River Kwai or
8mm is better than Dr. Zhivago.
Or what were the other ones?
Larry.
Larry. Yeah. How about Larry?
That's
is it better than Larry?
I liked Larry and Benny a lot. I would put it on par with Lawrence of Arabia and Ben-Hur.
Just checking. Now, since we're quantifying things, there's no point in quantifying if you're not going to cross-reference.
Sure, yeah, you
gotta. Well, Larry and Benny. But what is? Here's the thing with this one: is what is the name of a burger place? Whether it's fast food, whether it's a one-off place where the burgers are not the best burgers, but they hit the spot when you get one of them.
What?
I don't understand the question.
Yeah. So, what you saying?
Are you making a joke, or are you asking something?
No. So let me try to rephrase this. So it's so let's say you have a restaurant, right? And they serve hamburgers, and some of them they get like the A+ grade A USDA meat, and they're like known worldwide for their hamburgers.
Yeah.
And then you have other place where like you just drive through and you get your soda in like a big styrofoam cup, and the burgers they're not. It's the burgers are kind of like Jerry the race car driver. They're not the best that you ever had, but they're not the worst.
That's Dick's in Seattle, don't you think?
Yeah, there we go. Okay, perfect. That's exactly okay. So I was able to mumble through. I would say this one. I would give this one. I would say this. Yeah. I would say I would give this one 3.5 of the Dick's Deluxe. Is what I would give.
3.5. Okay.
I like this
3.5. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I like that we're specifying the type of cheeseburger.
Yeah, because I feel like it's with the Dick's Deluxe, it's it fits into the other Joel Schumacher movies. Falling Down, Batman and Robin, Batman Forever, The Number 3.
Oh yeah.
Flatliners.
Flawless was the same year as this. He must have been doing them at the same time, which is crazy.
Doing it, yeah, like Peter Jackson making the Lord of the Rings movies. It's just I think it's reliably good, and maybe I'm not in the mood for it all the time, but most of the time I am in the mood for it. So 3.5, solid movie, 8mm. I think Nicolas Cage, James Gandolfini, Joaquin Phoenix. Just good all around performances. So yeah, solid 3.5. What I say.
Dick's has to still be doing pretty good, right? I bet Dick's is doing all right in the pandemic.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean they've some of their locations are like the outdoor don't have dining to begin with, like the one in Wallingford, one in Cameron.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And,
Thank God.
Are there
Yeah.
still two in Lower Queen Anne?
No, there's only been one in Lower Queen Anne. The other one was at Kidd Valley.
When I moved there was two. There was one like right on Queen Anne, up by the Kidd Valley,
Mhm.
and then there was another closer off toward the Space Needle. I thought maybe I dreamt that. Anyway,
I'll have to.
The one by the Space Needle is the only one I've ever been to, I think.
Yeah.
no, there was one by where that record store is,
Which record store?
like
Oh,
right before you get to the hill,
Yeah.
Queen Anne Avenue,
Well, the Easy Street
Easy Street.
Oh,
now, which is now at Chase Bank, which is right across the Metropolitan.
another victory for America.
But
Another
I
fat
would
cat.
say though, the first actually it would have been the second movie that I've seen in Seattle. The first being The Hangover, the second one being Public Enemies.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
We Public Enemies came out around Shane's birthday, and we went to go see. I think what's the Da Vinci Code sequel called? Angels and Demons, I believe. I might have to check. I believe Angels and Demons came out around the same time as Public Enemies, and we went to go see Angels and Demons for Shane's birthday. And I could be wrong. This might be a different Shane's birthday, but the point is, we were at Point, I think, the Marcus Point Theater, and somehow there were like, they filmed scenes from Public Enemies like up at the Capitol, and like people with old cars got to use their cars for that scene, and they brought the same cars from the movie and parked them obnoxiously in the front of the Point Theater. So we rolled up for Shane's birthday with Shane, wearing funny makeup or something, and had to walk through a bunch of assholes in suits with their old cars. We're like, get out of the fucking, we're trying to watch Angels and Demons here.
Well, so I worked on the square when that movie was being filmed, and we could watch it from the windows of our office at this lobbying firm. You can see, and we saw. I don't think I saw Johnny Depp. I saw Christian Bale on the steps of the Wisconsin State Capitol.
Because it's just like one, and then in the movie it's like one shot. They like enter or leave a building. I remember being excited to spot it in the movie and being like, "Oh, that's it."
They used the Capitol. They had the whole square decked out with the cars.
But that's what I mean. And then when you watch the movie, you're like, "Wow, I can't wait to see it." And then it's like a guy going up some steps, and you're like, "What the fuck?"
That was like 2 days of shit to make that scene. Shut down a whole town.
Yeah, you know what? That was inefficient, kind of like Doily as governor. So
You working for Doily? Tell him to quit stealing money out of the transportation fund.
yeah, that's some good stuff. And like the first year I was in Seattle too, some other iconic movies that were out. Avatar, and then let us not forget Old Dogs.
Yep, that another legendary Penis Boys screening that you missed out on because you had abandoned the Midwest prematurely.
But Evan and I saw that.
You're
Evan and
right.
I saw Old Dogs out here.
Oh well, I saw it with Shane and Turco.
I didn't see it. Yeah,
There was some Splinter Cell action happening at that point.
what about Wild Hogs?
Same night we did. Did we have a synchronized theatrical viewing? I don't remember.
I think we synced up on Wild Hogs, didn't we?
I don't think so. I didn't see Wild Hogs with the boys. I saw Old Dogs with the boys.
Well, Wild Hogs is even better than Old Dogs.
I don't know if I agree with that.
IMO.
They're both great, but Old Hogs is just a little more freeform and experimental.
I mean, I'm going to vote for anything with Tim Allen over, as much as I love Robbie and Johnny.
Mhm. Yeah.
Should we talk? Should we go? Do we want to bookend current events and talk about Tim Allen's Twitter hit the past couple days?
Tell
Yeah,
us.
let's
I
do
don't
it.
know. I don't follow him.
Initially, Tim, and I'm paraphrasing, Tim said something like, I can't, this is the tweet. His tweet started with like, I don't remember which of you guys said it on here, but it was really funny and I wish I had said it. Which one of the Marx brothers is Carl? And then most of his followers were like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then the much more popular viral tweet, which he did not link as you're supposed to make it coherent that it's a sequential discussion, was Karl Marx, Communist Manifesto, Wikipedia, just being like, fucking look it up. You guys don't know what I'm talking about? But then because he didn't link it to the initial joke about which one of the Marx brothers, people just reposted him saying, Karl Marx, Comics Manifesto Wikipedia, because in isolation, that makes it look like he's like supportive of it rather than mocking the idea of it.
Which of course,
Well, and Tim, yeah,
Republican, right?
Tim Allen being a bit more of a conservative comedian. I
You
feel
never
like
know. Ever since that book about quantum physics, see, I think he has a more nuanced view of reality than most of us.
He knows less and less every day. Takes a wise man to be able to admit that.
Well, it reminds me of Ted Nugent saying, "I never went to college because I was too busy learning."
Wait, yeah, we still got to talk about opposite of a gun. Could someone explain in what manner a knife is the opposite of a gun?
I didn't say a knife was the opposite of a gun.
Yeah,
But I believe you agreed with him,
No, but then I said it was a pussy.
which makes more sense. I don't think that's the most logical one, but it's closer than a knife.
I just
yeah.
want
Again, it's the category. It's a projectile versus non-projectile.
But a non-projectile is not the opposite of projectile. It should be like a vacuum cleaner or something that would remove a projectile. And you know what? It's too bad you guys haven't seen Tenet, because in Tenet, when people go reverse entropy, they do the opposite of a gun, which is a gun that removes a bullet.
There's no way to see Tenet.
Well, because you waited too long. You're the one freewheeling in closed theaters like
let me
your life.
Let me real quickly, because I'm gonna have to pee pretty soon. But let me tell you, I had an opportunity to see Nightmare on Elm Street with all the cool trimmings that Alamo does and all the ads, and there was an impressive amount of promotional material for the first couple of Freddy Krueger films. It was extremely enjoyable to watch all the ads for the different Freddy Krueger like fan clubs and hotlines you call in the 80s. But I went because at Alamo for these movies you're spaced out, they check your temperature, you got your mask on.
We'll see. This will be the before footage when Evan gets COVID. We'll play this and then we'll play him in the hospital doing his last will and testament.
It was like 4 weeks ago, so I would have it by now. But I even talked
unless you're asymptomatic.
I talked to Mike about it. He said he thought it was okay. So,
but that's what I'm saying. If you're going to the theater, why didn't you go see Tenet when you could have?
You couldn't. There were no theaters open. I don't know how you saw it.
Any theater theaters were allowed to reopen in most states well a while ago. Alamo didn't just reopen.
Yeah, but they weren't showing Tenet anyway. They're only showing a few movies.
I don't know, but I would be incredulous if Alamo did no showings of Tenet.
They only recently opened in like October. So I don't think you're right about that. You're probably right. I probably could have gone to see a shit theater and definitely got COVID. But
because how expensive the theater is what keeps the virus out. The nice places, they're like, hey, no virus, you can't come in here. The cheap places, they're like, well, if you got money for tickets, come on in.
Yes, exactly. The expensive places like Alamo, they can afford to check your temperature and sell foods and all that stuff. So yeah.
Well,
but the funniest thing is, in theory, the safest thing is to have your face covered, and Alamo's whole thing is fucking feeding you and giving you drinks the whole time, which there's no way you're keeping a mask on doing that.
Yeah, but you're super far away from people.
You're what?
You're very far from the other viewers. I have my own row.
So I want to say, Evan, I'm at a point where after 2 hours of podcasting, I need to use a restroom.
Yeah,
because Evan was late, I had a bonus pee. I'm ready to go for another hour.
Well,
yeah, you're good to go. I think, you know what? I want to thank everybody for listening. I want to thank my special guest Adam for joining today. Evan,
always a pleasure.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.